What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. My name is Sean Sheehan, and today I am previewing the very first UFC card of 2024. Goes down in the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada on January 13th. It's UFC Fight Night 234, Ankalaev versus Walker 2. And you know what? It's a pretty good card. I think a lot of the Fight Night cards in 2023 were a little bit underwhelming, or they had one big fight on top of the card and maybe one more that we kind of cared about. But on this, there's a good few prospects. Watching even some of the newer guys coming through with maybe only one fight in the UFC or making their UFC debut. I think there's only one fighter making their debut today, but all of quality. There's a lot of good quality fighters on this, so I'm going to take a look in depth at the main card here, and I'm going to give you some facts and figures and my opinions on some of the undercard fighters as well, because there's one undercard fight in particular that I think we roll forward a year, maybe even less, and I don't think it's an undercard fight anymore, because these two lads are very, very good. But we will get to that. Let's start off with the main event, and it's the rematch between Ankalaev and Walker. Went back and watched the first fight earlier today, and honestly, is there much to take from it? I don't really think so. It ended very, very quickly. It was only 3 minutes into the fight. There wasn't that much thrown. There wasn't that much landed. I know some people at the time were kind of saying, oh, maybe Ankalaev was shown the better. I suppose it comes down to what happened with that shot where Johnny Walker kind of fell down and then jumped up. Like, was he hurt or was he playing possum? I'm not so sure. But I suppose let's analyze it like we analyze it before that fight, or analyze it straight up based on both of them. I think they're two very intriguing fighters to analyze, because I think they've both kind of changed their ways over the last while, especially Johnny Walker, like massively Johnny Walker. You know, obviously training in my home country of Ireland here with SBG, he's kind of adjusted his game from an all-out madman to now a more choreographed, jabbing, defensively sound fighter. Now, more defensively sound, I suppose, than it was before. It's very hard to be defensively sound at light heavyweight or heavyweight, you know, where lads are hitting you so hard. But you get me. He's a less offensive monster than he once was. But him being an offensive monster caused him so many losses, caused him so many defeats that maybe you wouldn't expect from Johnny Walker. And since he's kind of changed his ways, he has looked really, really, really good. Like, even, you know, the loss to Thiago Santos, I suppose, was one of those fights where you think it's going in the right direction. You know, if you perform like that again with a few improvements, you'll start winning fights. And that was the case. You know, obviously he lost to Jamal Hill, which was a massive setback. And Jamal Hill, we know how good he is. But then he went on a 3-fight win streak after that, beating Kutalaba, Craig, and Anthony Smith. And I suppose Smith, by decision, showed that long game that he can fight now. And then we had, obviously, Ankalaev, no contest. So, interesting how Johnny Walker has changed. Ankalaev, then, on the other side of it, watching him, he's a very intriguing guy to watch. Like, I've watched him many times down through the years and talked about him on different preview shows and reaction shows, I suppose. And I think what makes Ankalaev special is that he possesses, I suppose, a skill set that not many people over 185 pounds possess. And that is, I suppose, being a technical, good fighter. not many people over 185 pounds have that. Now, we have obviously some exceptions, the likes of Ferreira, Adesanya, Jones and all, but we don't have many exceptions. A lot of the guys base it on their athleticism. A lot of the guys base it on their power. A lot of guys base it on maybe if they have a really good wrestling game. But Ankalaev is a good all-round technical fighter. I would describe him as a southpaw counter striker. He pressures you in to draw you out, to counter you. You know, I really believe that pressure counter striker is something that, look, it was always the case in mixed martial arts, and I'm sure boxing as well, but it's something that's really become effective in the last 10 years in MMA. Obviously, McGregor was one of the foremost people in the world at doing that, really good at it. And we see people at the very top now, you know, Ferreira is pretty good at it. We saw how he kind of knocked out Strickland, pushed someone back, wait for them to come out and then counter them, and many more as well. The one thing I would say for Ankalaev is, like, it's very easy to see where he's at his best and at his worst. So where's he at his best? He's at his best when doing exactly what I said there. Pressuring you, drawing out your mistakes and countering them, and literally countering the mistakes. You make a mistake, he'll punch you in the face and knock you out, basically. But it's when he gets wild, it's his issue. So, I've kind of said they've both changed a little bit. And that wildness is something that both of them have maybe taken away. Like, I think Ankalaev at a lower level, he was able to throw with a little bit more reckless abandon because he could. But I think the higher he's gotten, he's realized that that's not going to work at all. And the same for Walker, but in a extremely more outwardly way. You wouldn't ever kind of look at Ankalaev and think, oh, that's a wild fighter. But when it gets wild, it's when he has trouble, I think. But when he's composed, he's brilliant. And when he fails, he loses that. So he's a very interesting fighter to look at. He's a strong kicker, and I think he doesn't kick enough. And that is the bit for Ankalaev, that the control, the technical aspect of his game is almost at a ceiling, because I feel like he just needs to do another little bit. But there's a fine line, isn't there, between I criticized him getting wild is because of that's the point in which he gets into trouble. But then when you don't do enough, there's another fighter later down the card who we'll talk about, who's a similar type of fighter in Manel Kape, and I think very similar, in fact. But there, you have to find that fine line. You're almost better off in most fights throwing a few more kicks, throwing a few more punches. But against Johnny Walker, are you? I don't know. So maybe that's the next question that we can answer. How does this fight go? What do these lads do? I really don't know, to be honest, because if Walker plays the more precise technical game, that's really playing into Ankalaev's game. But if Ankalaev stays too composed, doesn't throw enough shots, you're almost playing into what Walker wants to do then, because you're not going that 5% up that you need to actually take away this fight from Walker. So there's a real fine line. There's a real fine line for both of them. I feel like if Ankalaev can find a place where he can hit Walker and not turn it into a brawl, it's really going to benefit him. But the weird thing about Walker is he now no longer wants it to turn into a brawl. But the next question is, if you're John Kavanagh, if you're Johnny Walker, you look at Ankalaev, and I'm sure he's seen bits and pieces what I've seen. And now, when I say what Ankalaev isn't good when he gets wild, it's not that he's bad or anything like that, but I think he's less good than he normally is. But with that said, if I've seen little bits and pieces of that, I'm sure Walker has. I'm sure Johnny Walker and John Kavanagh have seen it, and Will Fleury and Carl Moore and them lads he trains with. If they've watched some of the back fights of Ankalaev, I'm sure they've seen that. And if you're Johnny Walker and you're a really good wild fighter, now sometimes defensively, obviously it turns against you. But if you see someone who has flaws when they get wild, you're brilliant wild, should you not want to make that a wild fight? Now, your problem is, if you make it a wild fight, you could get caught by a big Ankalaev left hand or whatever it might be, and that's it. But that's the chance you take. Like, is that a better game plan than playing a technical game with a fighter who's really good technically and is really good at playing the slower pace as well, even though I would like him to, maybe go up another 10-15%? That's the question, I suppose, and that's the question both of these guys will have to answer as this fight comes around. I suppose, what's the answer to it? We will see. I'm gone very bad at giving my picks, to be honest. I don't like giving my picks for MMA fights anymore, because I love just breaking them down, and I love just talking about what's going to happen. But my pick for this fight, when you're looking at their last few fights, right? So Ankalaev had a draw with Blachowicz. We leave out their last fight, obviously. And then he beat Smith, Santos, Ozdemir, Krylov, Kutalaba a couple of times, and then more after that. Whereas Johnny Walker, I mentioned earlier, Smith, Craig, Kutalaba, and then lost to Hill, lost to Santos, beat Span, beat Krylov. It feels like neither of them have really fought a carbon copy of the other fighter, right? The closest, though, I think, is Ankalaev fighting the likes of Ozdemir, who's a little bit wild, or Santos, who can be wild, not necessarily in 2022 when they did fight, but Kutalaba and things as well, the dim guys can be. I feel like there's a little bit more for that in what Ankalaev has done now. Will that be a major part of it? I'm not too sure, but also you look at Ankalaev and you look at the fact that he has 9 knockouts fighting the way he fights. That's not a great sign, I don't think, for Johnny Walker. So I'm drawn a pick out of me here. Ankalaev is the big favourite. The bookies aren't often wrong, and I think my pick will be Ankalaev for this one. The next one I want to talk about is a very interesting fight between Matheus Nicolau and Manel Kape. Obviously a rematch of a fight they had. Let me just get you exactly when this fight happened. It happened in if I can find it here on their record. It happened in 2021. So it was a while back. Let's put it that way. And it's a very interesting fight. I went back and watched it, and you almost had 3 very distinct rounds. Which I suppose we will get to here as we talk about it. But first of all, for Nicolau, he's an orthodox fighter who is a very orthodox fighter. He kicks the calf. He's good wrestling, good takedowns. I suppose he's good striking at times. And here's I suppose where we get to the fight, right? So round 1, Nicolau took Kape down, and he was not that strong on top initially, but when he got the second takedown, Kape was tired, and he was better able to kind of control on top. So if you're Nicolau and you're looking for a similar thing to round 1, we'll talk about the rest of the fight in a second, but probably better off pushing Kape against the cage, maybe holding him there for 2 or 3 minutes, then getting the takedown, or just making him run around, make him chase you, make it a little bit tough, right? The second round, Kape went at that big uppercut, I believe it was, and he did really, really well. He was just landing power punches, throwing at a great pace, but not throwing like in the first round. He threw like a jumping knee, which got him taken down. I believe it was the second takedown, and the first one was kind of for him throwing maybe a more reckless pressure shot as well. But in the second, it was the pressure wasn't just pressure. It wasn't just one shot, one punch, one knee. It was meaningful combination punching, and he did so well. A higher pace, Nicolau was not able to deal with it. And you thought they actually showed the betting. I think it was minus 500 entering the third. But then what happened? Kape just fought a slower pace. And Nicolau, to talk about his striking, his striking grew as Kape's reversed. So Kape, the second round, bang, 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 bang. The third round, bang, bang, bang. And in between them bangs, there was a bong from Nicolau. He was hitting him and hitting him harder in between Kape's shots. And that's why he won the fight. Basically, the winning of the fight was... and a lot of people probably would say the winning of that fight was Manel Kape dropping the pace and not throwing as many punches. He would have won that fight doing that if Nicolau hadn't reacted and thrown his counter punches and been really brave and really confident. And what a performance it was. Like, to be that confident in the third round after getting the head beat off you in the second round, that takes a serious fighter to do that. I always remember Floyd Mayweather saying, what makes a great fighter is how they can adjust. And in fight, how well they can adjust in fight. It's grand to go out and have plan A, but when that doesn't work, change to plan B, and maybe change to plan C before they have time to adjust to plan B. No. Not all those things happened here, but plan A worked, then it wasn't working, and then he had to react to Kape's adjustment from his plan B, and he did that and won the third round, won the fight. It was a brilliant performance. Now, you look at him, I suppose, in their totality, you have Kape being the southpaw and the orthodox fighter of Nicolau. The good wrestling of Nicolau, the good pressure of Kape and the power, but it depends what Manel Kape shows up. It's all well and good. Like we can break down this matchup and go, oh, look, if it's striking and if Kape can put on a pace, he'll win. If Nicolau gets his wrestling going, if he can tire out Kape, get on top, he can win, right? That's a pretty simple breakdown of that. But I think it's a little bit more complicated when you have a guy like Manel Kape, because if he chooses to fight or can fight the way like he did in the second round in that fight, he should really win, and he'll beat most guys in that division, honestly. But if he chooses to fight the way he fought in the third round, with Nicolau knowing the counter to that, like the literal counter to that, he won't win, because well, he might win, but it'll take a one-punch knockout against the guy who's beating you. So this all comes down, I think, to Manel Kape. Now, when I say all come down to Manel Kape, if Nicolau can take him down early, pressure him early, and continue to take him down throughout the whole fight, maybe there's nothing Manel Kape can do. But let's say that doesn't happen. I really do think it comes down to the confidence level of Kape, because you're not confident, and what happens is what happens in the first round and the third round. You either get taken down from a rush, you get taken down from a knee, or you'll get outstruck. And that's exactly honestly, what he doesn't want to do. Now, he's had a few fights since then. He's looked better. He's performed better. And maybe, he's a big favorite here, minus 200, plus 150. I'd probably go for Kape to turn it around here. Like, it doesn't take a whole lot for him to turn around what he did badly in that first fight. So let's go with Kape, but not with any assurity at all. And you know what? Maybe this pick will be different on the betting show as well. We will see on that one. Then we have Jim Miller versus Gabriel Benitez. A really fun fight this one is. Went back and watched a couple of Jim Miller's fights. Not that I really needed to, but do you know what the real reason I went back and I watched Miller's most recent fight? I just wanted to see, was there any signs of him being shot or being old or anything like that? I did the same with Arlovsky earlier on, and a couple of weeks ago, Colby, we saw him and he looked a little bit older, a little bit shot. Obviously Tony Ferguson and others. But honestly, Jim Miller just doesn't look it. He looks in great shape. He looked fast in that fight. And obviously, when you go in there and you knock your opponent out in 12 seconds or whatever it was, you're going to look good. But he looked like he was countering at a faster rate than his younger, fast opponent, So that's really good. So we analyze Jim Miller, and I think we need to analyze him on that. We don't need to analyze Jim Miller as an old man, right? We don't need to analyze him like Tony Ferguson or like someone, Frankie Edgar in his recent fights, or Marlon Moraes or whatever, even though Moraes, maybe not, he's an old, but you get what I mean. Miller has looked good. He is good. And now he has like the abundance of bandwidth in the brain that will help him even more in those fights. So that's the first thing I need to say. The second thing is just how he's fighting recently. So again, fighting out of the southpaw stance, throwing more power, always moving in that stance as well, which is something you would think at maybe the latter end of your career that you wouldn't be doing, right? Conserve that energy, do what you need to do, whether it's the grappling or striking, whatever it might be. But I think he has such great cardio, he can do that. And only people with great cardio can do that. And like what I'm talking about is literally just the movement in your stance. It also allows him to jump on subs and go for takedowns, because like if you didn't have that and you were worried about getting tired, you were worried about blowing your arms out or whatever, you wouldn't do it. But Jim Miller does do it, and it rarely, it doesn't pay off for him. Another few things about Miller that I've noticed just watching him back recently, I would say an underrated top game. We all think of Miller and go, oh yeah, he's a very good submission artist, but he does have an underrated top game as well, just in terms of getting down there. He's good takedowns off leg kicks as well. He loves getting his hips up, when he's on top of a guy, and really making it tough for them. Nice ground and pound, and as always, I'll mention again, dangerous with subs. Benitez on the other side of it then, also a southpaw. A very good low kicker, good guillotine as well, like Miller has, but loves a scrap, He moves a little bit like Miller, but instead of kind of moving a lot on the outside and kind of, maybe with feints or maybe putting a guy off in terms of what he's going to come in with, Benitez comes in with it. He moves in and he moves out, and he moves in and he moves out, whereas Miller might move on the outside and then move in, type of thing. I would say he's extremely brave in the pocket, an improving clinch game, and absolutely relentless when the fight hits the ground. He's one of those guys, you go back and you watch some of his fights, and he's a joy to watch, a very fun fighter to watch. The betting is close in this one. Benitez is just about the favorite, and I think the problem here for Miller is Benitez is going to be able to take his shots and he's going to be very relentless with those attacks, as I mentioned. I don't think like the feints on the outside and the movement on the outside is going to be bought as much by Benitez, and I think, as I said, Miller is not old, and we shouldn't treat him as an older fighter, but there's only so much damage you can take, and if someone like Benitez puts a lot of damage on you over 2 to 3 rounds, going to be hard to hold up for someone at the stage of Miller's career. So I will pick Benitez in that one. We'll talk about Ricky Simon versus Mario Bautista, and these are two lads who, again, a little bit like the Jim Miller fight, they're similar but with slight differences. Ricky Simon, watching back his fight with Jack Shore, is such an interesting fight because, he has that high guard, he whips in that right hand, he loves to get underneath for takedowns, throws lots of shots for the pocket, but many of them kind of aren't to land. Many of them are like 30% punches to kind of draw people in. But then sometimes, and I don't know there are many fighters like this, he almost throws fake punches at times, and then he throws the real ones, and you don't know what's coming. Is it going to be 100% Ricky Simon big right hand, which he landed on Jack Shore, or is it going to be, the little one of them? What's it going to be? Which is tough. It must be very tough for people to deal with. And the one thing I love most about Ricky Simon, he continues to go for takedowns. Most fighters go in there with a game plan like, okay, I'm fighting a striker here. What am I going to do? I'm going to take him down, right? I'm going to be relentless. Going to take him down. You get to minute 4 round 1. They've gone for 3 takedowns. All 3 have failed. And then they don't go for another takedown for the next, what did I say? Did I say minute 4, 11 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever it is? Those, to me, are some of the most frustrating fighters in the world, because you're just thinking to yourself, right, okay, if you're playing a game of American football and you don't get a touchdown, do you just stop going for touchdowns? If you're playing a game of soccer, you don't get a goal, do you just stop trying to score? Like, keep going for it. I understand if you're doing something and it's working against you and you're getting kneed up through the middle when you go for takedowns, you may need to change things up, but do it in a different way. Adjust yourself. Instead of attacking the left leg, attack the right leg. Instead of attacking a double leg, push him against the cage and try a trip, try a counter takedown. Try something. A lot of people don't, and I love the fact that Ricky Simon does, and it's a big part of why his game is so effective and so good. But this, on the other side of it, then he fights out of the MMA lab, so he's going to be a well-rounded, good fighter. I would say he's a slightly wilder version of Ricky Simon. He fires in that right hand too, but more constantly, I would say, than Ricky, and with that 100% tact on it most of the time. A switch stance fighter. He likes the small punches before the big punches, more in the pocket, I think, than Ricky. Whereas Ricky kind of he throws big small punches, if that makes any sense. And I don't know if it does, but I just think a little bit of Bautista's issue is he becomes a little bit too predictable. You don't know from Simon if you're going to get the big punch or the light punch, but from Bautista you're going to get the big punch all the time. If it's that big right hand he's opening up on it, you're getting that opened up right hand. He hits harder when he connects, but the big issue for him as well, he just throws one punch way too much. I feel like if he was to double up on punches, I feel like if he was to throw in combination, he would be a lot better. He is the underdog here, plus 110, plus 120-ish, minus 150 for Simon, and I do like Simon in this. As I said, I'll have I don't know if I'll have the betting show this week. Actually, we might be back with the betting show next week. So I'll throw. I've thrown in the prices here, and I'll throw in a few bets maybe as well. The last card in on the main card, and I'm recording this a little bit early, so maybe the cards is switched around a little bit. Actually, I was looking in 2 different places, and the cards are different. But what I believe is the last fight in the main card is Phil Hawes versus Brunno Ferreira, and I've always been fascinated with Phil Hawes, lads. I'll tell you the truth. 12-5 now in his career, and do you ever have a fighter where you see him a couple of times, you're like, this guy is going to be the champion. This guy is just unbelievable. Like, I know a lot of people who did it with Roger Huerta back in the day, or I remember one fighter I famously did it was Tom Duquesnoy, and I've got it right a couple of times as well, the likes of Habib and the likes of Cyril Gane and a few more as well. I don't always get it wrong, but Phil Hawes is one of those guys that, maybe I didn't say he'd be a champion, but I was like, this guy is going to be a really, really good fighter. And I wasn't the only one, to be fair. A lot of people did. He was fighting out of Jackson's at the time, and a lot of people, thought a lot of him, but it just hasn't really worked for him, has it? He did hit he won like 7 fights in a row there at one stage. Getting won one in Bellator, and then after the Dynamite Contender Series, and then came back to the UFC with a couple of wins, and it looked like it was turning, but then he's lost 3 of his last 4, only beaten Deron Wynn, got knocked out heavily in all 3 of those fights, if we're being honest. And like, where does he go to now? This is probably last chance alone. If he doesn't win this fight, I think he'll no longer be in the UFC. But you can't look at Phil Hawes and not be like, this guy has unbelievable power. There is something about him. Like, there's something about him that greatness could come from him. But like, he has to get all the bad parts out first. And, it needs... do you know what I always thought about Phil Hawes? I was thinking about someone recently. Mark Henry. I haven't heard... Mark Henry used to be a really great coach. I haven't heard much from him lately. I'm sure he's still training lads and all, but I always thought about Mark Henry. Like, I don't think he was the greatest, maybe, corner man in the world, or the greatest, whatever you want to say, and a weak coach, or in soccer we've managers and we've coaches, right? I don't think he'd be the best manager, but I thought he was a fantastic coach. You saw fighters going to his gym and suddenly they're jabbing better, suddenly they're defensively better. They might have the best game plans and all of that, but they are very well coordinated fighters. I think Mark Henry would be perfect for a guy like Phil Hawes. I really do. Someone like that to just, or a Matt Hume or someone like that. They would just be brilliant for Phil Hawes. But I feel like he kind of had that initially, I suppose, with Jackson's. But, people talk about Jackson's, maybe what it isn't what it once was. But I feel like he just doesn't have that anymore. And what he's meeting here in Brunno Ferreira is, his nickname, I just saw, it's the Hulk. And that's a good description of him. He looked good and he looked good on... it was his UFC debut last time out, wasn't it? He had 2 fights, and he won in his UFC debut against Gregory Rodriguez, and that's the fight he looked really, really good in. He just put him out with a big shot, basically, and that's the type of fighter he is. His record, 10-1, 10 finishes, and he is a beast of a fighter. He reminds me a little bit. He reminds me a little bit of, in shape anyway, maybe not in fighting, in the way he fights, of Kelvin Gastelum. He's a southpaw, but he switches, moves really fast. He's open an awful lot. Maybe not the best defensive fighter in the world. Gets caught a lot. That's why I think there is hope for Phil Hawes in this fight. But he's some lovely leg kicks. He looks like he's going to knock you out at all times. That's the type of fighter Brunno Ferreira is. And if you do make a mistake, you're gone. So this is the type of fight that if Phil Hawes has his head screwed on, he can absolutely win it. But if he makes that one mistake, he absolutely will lose it and lose his consciousness to go along with it. Very close in betting. Hawes is actually the favourite here, -125. Ferreira -105. I think I'm going for Ferreira as the pick in that one. But someone's getting blasted out of there. That would be my Sheehan show guarantee, that someone's getting blasted out of there. Right, let's look at the undercard. There is a fight that I really, really love on this undercard. But before that, just to run through a couple of them, Andrei Arlovski against Waldo Cortez Costa. Watching Waldo Cortez Costa, sometimes I watch a heavyweight and he's a 10-1, and I have this maybe stereotype of what heavyweights are, and I think like they're not that good, but if they hit you hard, they'll knock you out. And after watching a bit of Cortez Acosta, this is a great compliment, but I think he's slightly better than your regular heavyweight, right? And will that be enough to beat a 44-year-old Andrei Arlovski coming off of 2 losses against similar guys, maybe a little bit worse? I think it probably will be, yeah. He's a massive favourite at -400 plus 275 for Arlovski. I just watching a little bit of Arlovski's recent fights. Now, never write off Arlovski, because he could absolutely go in there and split decision and win here and not get touched for the fight, but he just looked a little bit more prone, literally prone, but a little bit more prone to taking shots recently. A little bit more prone to like being a bit slower, a little bit less controlled, I suppose you would say. And if that happens, if that is the case with Arlovski and it's gotten worse, Cortez Acosta absolutely has the power to knock him out. The salsa boy, he's plenty of sugar on those hands, and he's knocked out the likes of Lucas Brescia. I was watching that fight last time out. Look, he's lost the decisions as well on his record, and if he does get drawn into that fight, let's see what happens. But I do as much as I love the Andrei Arlovski decision bet, I will be going for Cortez Acosta to win that, mainly because look, Arlovski's just going to come out there and try to control him, try to jab him, try to kind of hide that chin and put the right hand behind it and move away. But I feel like Cortez Acosta, what he's really good at, and why I say he's slightly better than your normal heavyweight, is his ability to kind of step inside while not making himself like completely open to either get the head jabbed off him or to either counter strike is something that most heavyweights don't have. He can kind of double step inside and bang that right hand through the middle. And honestly, that might be enough to win this fight. So I'm picking him here. There's an interesting fight as well between Marcus McGee and Gaston Bolaños. McGee at 8-1 and Bolaños at 7-3 coming in here. McGee has had a few UFC fights now. He beat JP Boys. And he beat Johnny Newson. Like, he's an absolute finisher. 8 wins, 8 finishes. He's 33 years of age now as well, so he kind of needs to catch that train, I think. His opponent, 31 years of age. He's, won his UFC opener after coming straight over from Bellator. And, again, a finisher, 6 wins in his 6 finishes in his 7 wins. I like both of them. I like both of their styles. McGee is a big favourite at -333, and I can see why. I just think maybe at 5'8" and 5'7", these guys are two pretty big guys at 135, and maybe that extra little bit of power that McGee has. The likes of Bolaños he might not be used to seeing that, being a bigger guy in the weight class, and maybe it'll be a little bit of a struggle for him. Honestly, watching these two guys, it was hard enough for me to get a read here. I do like the fact as well, there's a lot of guys from the MMA lab here preparing for this, and McGee is one of those guys as well. And I just think maybe a good, well-rounded fighter might have just the edge in this one over Bolaños, but that's probably my weakest pick, honestly, in this card. I have a strong enough pick for Norma Dumont over Yana Santos. The betting on that one is also wide, -335-ish for Dumont, +250 for Santos. Like, I went back because both of them were on the card, but Yana Santos and Ketlin Vieira, and not a classic fight, but watching that, it shows the best and worst of Santos. I think she struggles against better athletes, but also she's tough and she's hard to beat, and if she's not completely outclassed, she'll be in it. I just think Dumont will outclass her. Like, I really, really like Norma Dumont. Again, she's kind of an in-betweener there in the divisions. She wanted to fight. She was fighting for a long time at featherweight, but now bantamweight. I think she missed weight as well, didn't she, recently? But, she's on a 3-fight win streak now. Beat Carl Hossa 2 fights ago. And look how good she looked a couple of weeks ago. So, look, Macy Chiasson is the only one that's beaten her since she lost to Megan Anderson in 2020. She's beaten Felicia Spencer Aspen Ladd. She can't be too far away from a title shot, whereas Yana Santos, the other side of it, then she's lost 3 in a row. Hossa, Home, and Aldana, and you really favour Dumont here. I just think if Dumont can stop Santos's will to beat her, and what I mean by will to beat her is like, once she's behind, keep her behind. If you can land your strikes, if you can be the faster, more technical fighter, continue to beat it and stop Santos from getting you against the cage, or from pushing you down, or from getting on top of you. A little bit like Leon Edwards against Covington. Every time Covington tried to chain wrestle with him, Leon was actually the one who won the chain wrestling, got on top, took him down, tried to submit him. That's the sort of thing you need to do for Dumont. Now, maybe not necessarily try to submit her so much, or try to fight with her on the ground an awful lot, even though, Dumont is one of these weird fighters who has 10 wins, 8 decisions, 2 submissions, no knockouts, but is a very good striker. And every time I watch her, I think, I love her hands and she's powerful. But there's another fighter like that in this card, I believe, who I'll get to in a second. But I just fancy Dumont. And do you know what? I'm gonna predict the first the first finish of her career in this one. And so I have come to my favorite fight of, maybe, is it of the night? Is my favorite fight of the night? Do you know what it is? And it's Farid Basharat versus Taylor Lapilus. Oh lordy, what a fight this is! If I feel like maybe I'm in a unique position with this, because obviously Basharat coming out of the UK, but a lot of people know the Basharat brothers now. But Taylor Lapilus then, having been in the UFC, gone out of the UFC, and now back in the UFC, but he's been fighting kind of on the French scene and fought an Irish guy in Caelan Loughran last time out. This guy Taylor Lapilus is 19-3, and he's one fight back in the UFC, as I said, after destroying loads of lads over in Aries and TKO and other places. This guy is one of the best fighters in the world at 135, sorry. Without a shadow of a doubt. This guy is borderline top 15 at the moment and could climb even higher. It's just because he was out of the UFC. And he went out of the UFC off of a win, and he was 3-1 in the UFC. So, and this was in 2016. It's not exactly like Taylor Lapilus was, losing and he got cut or anything. I think it was a contract issue or something like that. I can't remember exactly what happened, but it wasn't on merit he was out of the UFC. And now the fact he's back, Caelan Loughran was a Cage Warriors champion last time out. It was on short notice for both of them and all of that, but he beat Caelan and he fought really well in that fight. He's such a good all-round fighter, has 6 submissions, 4 knockouts, and a dangerous guy in all areas. As I said, really hard to beat, really hard out. And Farid Basharat has fought nobody like him so far. He has fought no one close to the level of Taylor Lapilus. And if you want to test, you want to see how good this really good prospect is, well, here you go, and here you have it. And if you want to see how good Taylor Lapilus is, well, here you go as well, because Basharat is very good. He's unbelievable on top. For a small lad, he's really heavy on top as well. I would say the same for Lapilus, and he's a finisher. He's kind of a pop striker, just pop you. Accurate, but maybe not the biggest power in the world. And, Taylor just a beast. He loves to go, both of them love to go for subs. Obviously, Basharat a little bit more, considering, he's 6 submissions out of his 11 wins, only 1 knockout, but has, as I said, good striking as well. I love this fight so much. Farid Basharat is a -163 favourite, -1, up as far as -145 for Lapilus. And get all over that. +145. Did I say -145? This is a pick-em fight for me, but if you're giving me +145 on Lapilus, I will gladly take that. This might be the end of the initial hype train for Basharat, but I too think Basharat still has a very high ceiling, very young in his career. But at this stage of your career, when you're meeting someone as good as Taylor Lapilus, it is not easy whatsoever. The opening 3 fights of the night then are actually not bad as well. Weston Wilson, a southpaw, big guy for the division, fights. I believe he trains in Wonderboy's gym. I think Wonderboy's father was in the corner for the fight. I watched him. So what you expect, the karate stance, all about control. But if he gets pushed back, it's a big issue for him. He also is not as good defensively, I don't think, as Wonderboy, and he gets hit straight down the middle. Not the best takedown defense as well, but very dangerous if he gets out in the open and controls the fight. Gabriel Santos, the other side, then he's 2-0 in the UFC, but God almighty, this poor lad fought Onana and Lerone Murphy as his 2 fights in the UFC. That's Joy Herbert type of unfair matchmaking there. But a switch stance fighter, nice leg kicks, fast striker, throws spins, goes for subs, power. Should be a really good striking fight, honestly. Let me just check the betting on this one. I don't think the betting line is up for this one maybe yet, is it? It is, in fact, and Weston Wilson is a big underdog, -770 for Santos, +470 for Wilson. I think that's about correct. Yeah, I wouldn't be maybe a flyer of the week, because Wilson has good striking, but I don't think so on that one. Then Nicholas Mata against Tom Nolan. Really like this Tom Nolan. He's an Aussie. I think he's let me just check there. He's 6-0, I believe. That's correct. Where is he? Yes, 6-0. And I watched a few of his fights over in Australia, one of which was a mad knockout. So his opponent had him pushed against the cage, going in on his hips for a takedown, and he kneed him right up through the middle and knocked him out. But the referee started again, and because like there was some illegal punching or something, knocked him out again and ended up winning the fight. But very talented striker. He's one of these guys who's like thin and limber and all. He doesn't look that powerful, but by God, he's putting people out of there, and slick on the feet, really good fighter. Mata then, the complete opposite to slick on the feet, I would say. High hands, low output, counters though, powerful, and he's a fighter who is an all countering, kind of walk you down a little bit but not too much type of fighter, who wants you to throw so he can counter you. And I'll tell you what, it'll be manna for heaven for our guy Nicolas Mata, because the big trend Tom Nolan will come forward at 23 years of age, born in 2000. I'm so old. He will throw a lot of shots at him and he'll give him opportunities. And who is going to win? We will see. I like Nolan in that one. He is the favourite around -200. Mata plus 160. And in the opening fight of the night, Dennis Bondar is the underdog at -132-ish. -165 for Felipe Bundis. Felipe, a lot of 1-2s, a lot of clinching. Love his foot stomps actually in the clinch, but he throws these capoeira kicks as well. Powerful left hook. He was the LFA champion. This is his UFC debut, so obviously hasn't tested at this level. And watching Dennis Bondar, or Bondar even, I love his style. He's so fun, unorthodox, hands up, then hands down. He's cocky. He talks to you. He's powerful. He kicks to the body, spinning elbows, all forward motion, spin kicks to the body, really good takedowns as well, but he needs more of them. Like, there's a little bit of the Johnny Walker or Michel Pereira in Dennis Bondar, in that he is too wild and too mad and too crazy almost. But don't change, because I absolutely love watching him fight. Honestly, I might go for Bondar in this. I think he's a very exciting fighter if he can put it all together. He doesn't always put it all together. That's the thing. And I think if I'm not mistaken, let me just check here. 14-4 is Dennis Bondar. It's 10 submissions and 4 knockouts. And like, he doesn't fight like a guy who wants to take the fight to the ground, although he does it the odd time. But I was surprised to see he has so many submissions, but not in another way because he's striking or his wrestling is so good. I just wonder, against a really good striker like Bunez, if he will take him down more. If he does, I actually think he'll win, and I'll pick him to win. So, that's it. That's my preview for the opening UFC card of the year. Some very good prospects on it. A main event that needs to be done for the top of the light heavyweight division, and you know what? One for the flyweight division as well, because Nicolau and Manel Kape, maybe the winner of that could decide the next challenger for Alessandro Pantoja's title. All right, everyone. I will leave it there. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.